After 4 years, EGSA has brought back the Executive Leadership Summit. And most of you know by now that EGSA President Charlie Habit will lead the discussion as moderator. So thank you, Charlie, for stepping in. So let's go ahead and get started. I'd like to bring up to the stage Mr. Charles Hunsucker. Charles has been an executive at Kohler. Charles has been an executive at Kohler for more than 20 years. He currently serves as Vice President of Sales for Kohler Power Systems. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Mr. Charles Hunsucker.
Thank you and good morning. So this morning I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the history of Kohler. I'm going to condense that down as much as possible so to save plenty of time to talk about my main topic, which is power industry collaboration and some opportunities that I think may exist there for all of us in this room. Kohler was founded in 1873 by John Michael Kohler when he decided to take a cast iron horse trough, heat it up, put some enamel on it, attach some feet, and he created the world's first bathtub. From that point forward, we've been in the plumbing business. If you fast forward a few decades, 1920 rolls around, we entered the power generation market, when again, we created the world's first engine-powered residential standby generator. At the time, it was 4 cylinders and put out a whopping 1.5 kilowatts of power, but it was truly a breakthrough product for the 1920s. This is where we get condensed. I'm going to skip forward about 97 years with our latest introduction, the Kohler diesel power generators that we just launched last October. They're currently available between 800 and 2,500 kW, and in Q1 of next year, we will expand that up to 3,250, and not long after that, we will take the range up to 4 megawatts. Today, Kohler Company is still privately held. Our current president and CEO, David Kohler, is the great-grandson of our founder, John Michael. We have 4 main divisions. We're about $7 billion in annual revenue, approximately 34,000 associates, 50 manufacturing facilities, more than 50 brands, and we're on 6 continents. So we've come a long way in those 144 years. So I said I was going to talk to you today about power industry collaboration. To set the stage for that, I would first like to highlight a continuous weather trend that we see that I think sets this up, and Hal somewhat alluded to it this morning. I want to take you back to 1980. Between 1980 and 2016, the U.S. has averaged $5.5 billion weather-related events per year. But if you look at the most recent 5-year time span, between 2012 and 2016, that average becomes 10.6. That's a 93% increase in large billion-dollar related weather disasters in the U.S. in only a 5-year span. And here we are, 2017, we've already had 11 such events, and we're only in September. And as we stand here today, there are 3 very large storms, and who knows what's going to happen with those as they continue to form out in the Atlantic. So we have a lot of issues in front of us and trends that I think point to additional need within our industry. I'm very aware that based on the current storms in Texas and in Florida, that some of my remarks today may seem somewhat reactionary. And in fact, many of my colleagues back at Kohler tried to convince me at the last minute to change topics, but I refused to do so. The fact is, I had the outline written weeks ago, long before Hurricane Harvey ever formulated in the Gulf. I just think the last month of activity only helps to validate the rising concerns that all of us should be seeing. If you expand beyond the U.S., the same trends hold true. But we're fortunate in the U.S. to have aid and resources available to us that many other nations don't have. An example of this is last October when Hurricane Matthew hit Haiti. Kohler Company partnered with Water Mission, a nonprofit organization, to assist. The biggest challenge that they were facing was cholera. It's a bacterial disease caused by unsafe drinking water. Working with Water Mission, we were able to provide 3 million gallons of safe drinking water to the inhabitants of a small village called Jeremy. It's about 100,000 people. Water was pulled out of the river using Kohler generators and Kohler pumps. It was filtered through a Kohler Clarity water purification system that takes out about 99% of the bacteria from water, and then it was distributed out to those that need it. These efforts played a part in effectively saving an entire village of 100,000 people from waterborne disease. Now, when I step back, I, like many of you out there, spend most of my days and weeks and months worrying and strategizing on how to increase market share and to increase profitability and to beat the rest of the guys that are on this panel today. But if I look at the level of humanitarian action that our company took during these times, not only does it make me proud, but it makes me want to figure out a way to contribute more at a higher level. And I want to be clear, and Hal spoke to it this morning, I'm not suggesting for a moment that Kohler is the only company that provides relief during times of crisis. In fact, it's been very well documented over the last few weeks that several of the members in here and several other organizations have done the same thing. That's what we do. We all step up, events happen, this organization and our industry responds. We make sure that we send monetary donations and parts and pumps and products and service crews down to those that are needed, and we assist the best that we can. We all follow our individual company protocols. We all follow our individual company corporate responsibilities. We make sure that we have enough product during hurricane season on hand to support those that are in need. And we make sure that our dealers and our distributors that are down in those markets have excess inventory as well. It's just what we do. We step up individually and we find a way to assist. Which brings me to my next point. When I look at the panel that's speaking today, based on our estimates, we think it represents approximately 62% of the world's genset production. It's a big number. If you scale that down to North America, we think that estimate is closer to 90%. Much bigger number. So here's my question. How do we, as an organization, come together to find a way to increase the protocols and the standards within our industry to get more people, more help, faster, more efficiently, more effectively than what we're doing today? I think there's an opportunity there. Is there an opportunity for us to set our competitiveness aside briefly and come together and unite and figure out what it is that we can do as an industry at the manufacturer level to help support that? I read an email just last week that Charlie sent out about the National Tech Share Program, and I think it was fantastic collaboration. But my question is, how do we do that at the manufacturer level with the amount of resources that we have available to us? You could take that in a number of directions. We could look at product specifications. Should we have more unified and uniform specifications for emergency applications, making it easier for those first responders to start up and utilize equipment, regardless of the brand that it is? We could come together and we could create a United Voice campaign or some form of public service announcement to create better awareness and better preparation for all of those people out there that may not be aware today. What would that look like? And to me, this is really where EGSA comes in. I would challenge the EGSA organization to, as the common thread, the common denominator amongst all of the manufacturers, to find a way to get all of the individual players into a room and force that discussion. Force us to figure out how collectively we can have a better impact than we do today. I don't know what that might look like, but I can tell you that I and Kohler Company are more than willing to be part of the solution. We would welcome the opportunity to host such a discussion at Kohler, Wisconsin, at one of our hotels, if others view it as a worthy cause. I think we could have a lot of impact. I think we could make a lot of difference for a lot of people out there. And at the same time, I think we could continue to elevate and promote what our industry does. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. Our second speaker, like I said, we're going to keep this moving today so we can stay on time. Our second speaker of the day is Matthias Vogel. He's the Executive Vice President of Sales and Service Network for MTU Onsite Energy. He is leading the sales business globally for all of the RRPS applications. Everyone, give a big welcome to Matthias.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And good morning, everybody. I think the last time I was standing here was on the 17th of September in 2013. And now I have to give a speech again, what changed in the industry or what is the influence. I think mainly I'm standing still up here and Aaron is still standing up there. So I think the rest changed, but it's just one thought of it. Let me explain what changed a little bit in our company, at least since 2013. We're now part of a bigger family. Rolls-Royce acquired us basically to 100%, so we're part of Rolls-Royce. Rolls-Royce is mainly divided in 5 sections. One is civil aerospace. Probably most of you know the turbine of a 380. It's powered by Rolls-Royce and a lot of other planes. Would say we have a market share in the mid-size body of about 80%, so quite significant. The other sector we have is the defense business, defense aerospace. A lot of strong programs in the US on US fighters. The division I'm in, power generation, power systems with roughly 19% of the revenue. We have another division called marine. Mainly what we do in marine is really everything on ships, what is mission critical. So it's really related to our industry here as well. So we don't do the welding, we don't build ships, but we do everything what is mission critical. And that really has a lot to do with this, what we do here as well. And then nuclear, yes, we're mainly providing the backup power for nuclear power plants, but as well we are searching on reactors. We're building all the reactors for nuclear submarines. Mainly we have a market share of about 80% globally. They're very safety critical application. And that is well why the Queen of England held a golden share of our company. So our company cannot be sold without the Queen of England. Good, this is us. About a 15 billion company, about 55,000 employees on a global scale, and out of that about 35,000 engineers. So what are we? I mean, MTU Onsite Energy. I think most of you here in the room, that's why I don't have to explain and know our product portfolio. I think we proudly can say we have a product portfolio really from 30 kV up to 10 megawatt with our medium speed engines. We're serving in the gas market, continuous as well as standby. We can do HFO. So I think we have a lot of touch points in this industry, and I'm really proud to be a part of that. But the presentation was not about us today and about our company. It was really about what is changing in this industry. And I think there's a lot of things changing, at least when we look at the industry. So Wärtsilä, you know, that a big recip company as well, is entering into the solar market with hybrid power. Siemens is buying a battery storage company. Elon Musk, Tesla, a lot of you know, I can fix South Australia power network in 100 days, or it's for free. Norway, basically changing to all electrical cars by 2025. The UK just announced going to electrical car by 2040. And I think that has an impact on our industry. I think it will be a big driver as well for us, how we're gonna change. And to illustrate that, I would like to put you on this graph here. So if you look at the cost of a battery, in 2012 it was about $1,000 per kW. This cost came really down, and it's sitting about $200 per kilowatt. That is already very competitive from my perspective in the energy sector. But I think there's even a bigger trend, which this industry will be seeing very well, is what happens to the secondary market of these batteries. Because I know you're going in your Tesla, you have a range of 500 miles. It drops to 420, you're not very satisfied because you really need that 80 miles. In the power generation, the second-hand market of batteries is probably a good utilization of these batteries because you can still package them, you can package them to larger amounts. So then you see the secondary market not at 200 kV per W, you see it maybe at 80, 60, and then 100 kilowatt out of blue gets very, very attractive. And 200 kilowatt hours as well getting very attractive. So I think that will drive or at least change our industry. I think definitely in the smaller sector of the gensets, and therefore we're really looking at that. But I don't think it will only change it in the smaller sector, it will as well change it in the larger scale, in the larger sector. And you see things coming up. California just powered a 50 megawatt plant. Australia is heavily investing into that. So I think even for this industry where we have a lot of backup power, it's going to change. Just one question in this room. What do you think in the US, since you're much more familiar with the US than I am, what is the average duration of an outage in the US? Is it, maybe you can raise your finger, is it above 1 hour or below 1 hour? So who thinks it's above 1 hour? Okay. And the rest is then below, I hope. Yeah. The average is sitting at 48 minutes, and you can see it on that chart. And totally, we have about 3,879 outages in 2016, and I think that's where the battery can hit. 48 minutes you can bridge with a battery, from my perspective. Longer, and that's the left side, and my colleague was just talking about hurricane, it will not bridge it. I mean, if you're going into days, it's going to be totally different, and probably you need a different kind of power in that range. But I think microgrids and other things will as well be implemented in those cases. So where do I go with this whole thing? What do I think will happen over the next years? And I think what happens is really, you see it today, basically we talk a lot about engines, we talk about gensets, and then we talk about service and spare parts. If we look forward, really it's much more about how do we bring this all together? Solar, wind, batteries. How do we integrate our renewable and storage into the system? How do we do much more on life cycle services and not just this preventive standby maintenance? Automation, how you connect that. If you have all the cars basically coming into the grid and you have a car basically sitting in your garage, is this part of your backup service as well? How can this battery of this car be utilized for our grid? So I think there's a lot of thinking and intelligence be in the network in the future, and then it's about genset and still about engines. So that was my little presentation and thought about this industry. Thank you very much for listening, and looking forward to see you on the questions.
Matthias, thank you. Next up, we've got Terri Lewis from Caterpillar. Terri has been a member of the Caterpillar team since 1988 across multiple functions. I've got a long list here: marketing, product development, supply chain, sales and support, M&A. Let's welcome Terri Lewis to the stage.
I want to start off and say I started when I was 10, and I had changed jobs a lot, and it was probably because I couldn't keep one. Actually, I'm like an avid learner. I love to learn, and so I've had a great career at CAT doing a lot of different things. I'm going to go through, I'm not a deep genset expert, so don't ask me any hard questions. But what I do is I'm responsible for what we call our digital and technology strategy for our industry vertical of energy and transportation. So I cover power generation, oil and gas, marine, rail, and our turbine business. So sometimes it's called Internet of Things. It's all about data and turning that into actionable insight. So go through this. This was early 1990s, a video that we showed at our leadership summit. This was right after Al Gore said that he invented the internet.
High iron readings. What about previous iron readings? Looks like I'll need to open a work order. We don't have the part locally. I'll have to check inventory worldwide. Aye, we've got the part at Grimbergen.
Apple wasn't around then.
Hello, Harry here.
Hello, Harry. Ian Davidson here. You know that 992 you've got in a quarry outside Glasgow?
Aye. It's been running just fine.
Maybe so, but I just got a warning about a final drive. The chip detector on board identified high iron readings on the left front final drive. I reviewed the data on the machine, including previous iron readings. I think we better replace that final drive, Harry. My diagnostics tell me it's going to go within 80 to 100 hours.
That 992 can't have been operating more than 3,000 hours.
3909, actually. But the machine is covered under our customer support agreement, so there won't be any additional charges to you.
Can you schedule it so I don't have any downtime?
No problem, Harry. Under our customer support agreement, you've got guaranteed machine availability with a penalty clause for downtime. My customer profile information tells me you're operating a half day on Saturdays. So why don't I schedule a Saturday afternoon repair at, say, 1 o'clock? I see the standard repair time for this job is 7 hours, so I should be able to complete it with no downtime at all. Now, we don't stock a complete final drive at the dealer, but I've sourced one at Grimbergen, and it'll be here on Thursday.
1 day to get the part. Is that going to cost me extra?
No. Since we predicted the failure, we'll get the part out on our stock shipment. Harry, the system indicated I'll need some special tools, so I'll schedule them along with a boom truck for Saturday afternoon, if that works for you.
Aye. That'll be great, Ian.
Good. Oh, another thing. Based on the machine's current field usage, it's due for PM in about a week. Can I take care of that on Saturday as well?
That'll be fine, Ian. We'll knock out the repair and the PM at the same time then, on Saturday. I'm glad you caught this before it failed on me, Ian. Could have cost me a lot of production.
So am I, Harry. It's best for all of us in the end.
Pity you have to be on call on a beautiful day like this.
Part of the job, Harry. But listen, I'll let you get back to your work. It looks like I've got to grab my other line.
I really like that video. Some people are, it's taken us a long time, and a lot of people don't know that Caterpillar's been on this journey of deploying Internet of Things type technology to our products and our services for, ever since we had the vision of what it could do. It's taken a lot of advancement in terms of technology, converging sensors, some of the telecom capabilities, but also the industry and our customers had to be accepting of it. So where we're at, our strategic intent of what we're doing is to, help our customers be successful and leveraging our deep domain knowledge and technology to be smarter, faster, anywhere. Really, mobile is the key. And we want to make sure that nobody comes between us and serving our customers' needs. We're really focused on the customers, and a scary part of this for about anybody that gets engaged in this, especially for an OEM, is if we do our job right, if we do analytics and condition-based monitoring, we'll actually probably sell less product, and we'll actually sell less parts. So it's a little bit of a big change for us and for the industry. As we're also deploying the technologies, suddenly we've got our smart connected assets are communicating how they're operating We know where they're at. We know if they're running. We know sometimes too who's running them. And so it's really changing the way we work with our customers and with our dealers. We sell everything for the most part through an independent dealer network. And so it becomes a very deep integrated relationship. It's a little bit scary. So things like data privacy, data consent, and access get to be a very big part of the deployment. If we look at it, the Internet of Things, there's a lot of studies done by McKinsey and IBM and Cisco and everything else about 50 billion connected things in the world and the trillions of dollars that it would benefit for the industry. So a few years ago, these numbers are not precise. They're not counting precise, but I think they're directionally correct. We scanned through over a period of about 9 months a lot of data around the industries that we could find. The marine business is great, fabulous. They've got absolutely everything documented. We had to take a little bit of some estimates for the power generation business. But what these numbers represented was if you had a fully deployed IoT technology across the value stream, what would be a conservative benefit to the industry. And so for electric power, you can see was about $260 billion. I think that's probably conservative. I think we were assuming something like 2 to 3% improvement, maximum 5. Caterpillar does not participate in the whole value stream. And so we were talking earlier about, collaboration in the industry. This is an area where the business is, you've got to collaborate around data. All the suppliers, all the vendors, all the customers need to collaborate with this data to drive the benefits through the industry. So in the end of the day, everybody, not excluding all of us in this room, we've got too much data, and what we need to do is to take all of that data and drive the benefits to giving the right data and the right understanding of what it means for actionable insight to be able to deliver on that. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Terri. Okay, thanks again, Terri. Our next speaker is Mr. Alex Savelli. I hope I did that right, Alex. I didn't do the hand signal, but Alex Savelli is the Executive Director of Power Generation Markets for Cummins. A Cummins veteran for more than 22 years. We welcome Alex to the stage.
Thank you. So I was trying to teach Terri how to actually pronounce an Italian last name the right way. It's Savelli with a hand up like that. But okay. Good morning, everybody. So my name is Alex Savelli, and I lead the Cummins Power Generation line of business globally. It is a pleasure to be here today to share our views of both the industry, its outlook, as well as participating in this active leadership panel, later on this morning, right? Before we talk about, sort of the current state of affairs of our industry and a little bit of the outlook, I would like to provide just a little bit of background, on Cummins. We're also, pretty honored. We'll be hosting the Gearhead factory tour later on, today. And, hopefully, this background will give you a bit of context actually as you visit our Fridley facility. That's our largest plant and technical center around the world. So, overall, Cummins on Onan, we're founded, by two entrepreneurs, Classic Cummins and D.W. Onan, almost 100 years ago. So quite not as long as Kohler, but still pretty impressive. We'll be celebrating 100 years right at the end of this decade here. Cummins was actually founded in 1919, and this was the result of an unlikely partnership between a banker and an inventor who shared the belief, of the power of ideas and vision, of what ingenuity and hard work could achieve. These men were Classic Cummins and W.G. Irvin, visionaries who saw the potential and the power of the simple diesel engine. Cummins' first diesel engine was a 1.5 to 8 horsepower, which you actually can see at the bottom there. It was called Veed, and was actually used for farming with sort of irrigation pumps. The origin of Cummins is in Columbus, Indiana, and the Cummins still operates out of our headquarters where the company was founded first. On the other side, Onan was founded in 1920, just 1 year later. One of his first product was a 10-light generator. 10-light was developed for ice fishing cabins, out of all things, being here in Minnesota, but providing the equivalent of 10 light bulbs, worth of power. It was the product that launched, more than 97 years of leadership, into our industry. Cummins initially was a supplier to Onan, and we became, sort of joint venture partner, and eventually bought Onan in 1992. And today, Onan is fully part of our Cummins power generation line of business. Overall, continued investment in technology, research and development, drive innovation, and it's also really present today. So in 2016, a year when the global markets were actually down, we invested more than $636 million in research and development. We decided almost 16 years ago that to embrace rather than fighting clean air standards. The technology has proven to be a critical differentiator as we have led the way in reducing particulate matter and nitrogen oxides emissions to almost near zero levels. Customers know they can count on Cummins to deliver clean, sustainable, and dependable technology. As a recent example of our innovation prowess, Cummins recently revealed the first ever Class 7 electric truck powertrain, which you actually can see on the right side of the chart there. It's a demonstrator truck that surprised the industry, also surprised Tesla. It's named IEOS, and uses a 140 kWh battery pack instead of a 12-liter diesel engine. The weight of the electrical powertrain is roughly equal to that of the removed engine, after treatment, transmission, and fuel tanks. The tractor day cab, when paired with the trailer, has a gross vehicle weight of about 75,000 pounds. And the vehicle actually has a range of about 100 miles, and that can be extended to about 300 miles with the extra battery pack. This powertrain and truck, will enable Cummins to learn more about the potential electrification holds, for larger vehicles. Cummins has also announced its commitment to offer electrical powertrains, solutions to transit applications by 2019. Cummins' strong global position gives us extensive research. We are a global company. It's about 55,000 people. We're basically operating across also 6 continents. Close to $18 billion in revenue last year, and organized in 4 business units. One of the 4 business units, so the engines, power systems, components, and distribution. The Power Systems division was actually formed last year in 2016, and basically a combination of our power generation business unit and the high horsepower business. And basically the business is focused now on both, not only power generation equipment, but also large engines. Actually, almost 60% of our large engines, do go into power generation equipment. So it actually made quite a bit of sense to put the 2 units together. Whether your requirement, are simple or complex, installation large or small, Cummins power generation experts, can partner with you to basically, to offer, a complete line of diesel and gas product line, as well as components, for power plant solutions. With one of the largest service and support networks in the world, which, unlike some of the other players in the industry, we actually own our distribution network. We can deliver, basically one-stop shop and a single source of, warranty and round-the-clock emergency service better than anybody. We call this the power of one advantage. Okay, so switching a little bit to our industry outlook and what is changing. Overall, when we actually look at certainly as the global economy slowed down, as well as overall the commodity super cycle came to an end, our industry was impacted quite a bit over the last few years. Our view, we're actually starting to see growth resume, but the expectation is that it will continue to be modest and certainly not pick up a great amount of pace until both the world economy, the infrastructure, sort of investment, as well as commodities, kind of like return to more sustainable and robust levels, right? Having said that, many of the underlying drivers that make our industry thrive are still present, right? When we actually look at the world population, it continues to grow, on its way to 9 billion inhabitants by 2050. Urbanization and continuing infrastructure growth also continue to take place. We did have, as Charles mentioned, weather events of high intensity and longer duration are also present. And then we also have an ever-increasing number of connected devices, as Terri just mentioned. We kind of it's funny, many folks in the industry actually had that vision back to 1990, and I agree with Terri. It took quite a bit of time to get there, but it is something that, it does drive a huge amount of overall energy consumption and just being able to handle that. I was actually reading, these days we talk a lot about autonomous vehicles. There was a study or a report on The Economist in May that actually was just sharing, if you actually look at an autonomous passenger car, just one, it would generate close to 100 gigabytes per second. And you can imagine what you do with that data, what needs to be stored, and to store that data, what you need, to be able to operate a data center, right? So all of this, added up, does drive energy consumption up, and the need, for reliable power, which is, what we do as an industry, right? On the other hand, there's quite a bit of, of new technology and business disruption knocking at our door as we speak. I think we've heard certainly, Matthew talk about energy storage. Terri talked about all of the, from a data-enabled services and everything you can do there. We also know how much from a renewable point of view, whether it's adoption of solar and wind power, that's also dropping in price and actually accelerating quite a bit. And when you add all of that up, the other underlying change is the move, overall, or shift from central generation to more of a distributor generated or generation model. So how the industry responds to all these developments will certainly define our time. We'll overall, one example of the accelerating pace of DG is actually the graph on the right side of this chart. It shows the overview of the net added capacity here in the U.S. Up to 2016. And one can see that most of the capacity added has been the renewable space, with solar and wind, and basically centralized capacity, especially in the form of coal, continues to be retired year over year. A recent study by Navigant Research suggests that, from a distributor generation business opportunity, it's basically projected to more than double, from about $80 billion in 2014-15, up to $190 billion, by 2023. The same study predicts that in the U.S., when we actually look at the amount of investment made in DG versus CG, this year, DG will actually take over from central generation, for the first time ever, right? And, both U.S., Europe, as well as Asia Pacific are certainly the markets where we're actually seeing this taking more and more pace. As I said before, these changes, they represent both an opportunity and a threat, for us. But we do need to evolve and respond accordingly. In the short term, while demand recovery is still modest in our markets, we are seeing many opportunities around the world to participate in the capacity and grid firming markets that are being formed as large swaths of renewable power are being deployed, such as the one in the United Kingdom that I'm about to talk here. This is an example. This is actually the single largest gas power project that we ever undertaken. It's about 348 megawatts, across 18 sites. Each site is about 20 megawatts. All in support of firming the UK grid, given its large dependence on wind power. Over the medium and longer term, it's critical that we ready our responses, to these disruptions as new technology and business models will continue to push their way in. This does include, as Matthew alluded to, also offer, storage and, hybrid solutions for our customers, whether, just beyond the reciprocating engine type of genset with storage, solar, and so on, right? But the key thing is also making sure that we are also sizing and tailoring those solutions, to our customers. Really keeping up with this development of distributed generation. Cummins has been meeting the power needs of our customers for nearly 100 years, whether by diesel, natural gas, electrification, or something else. And we actually plan to continue to lead the way in all these technologies. For all the ones we talked about, including also potential fuel cells, being applied to both transportation and the energy market. So we plan to be ready. I think the key question for all of us in the room here is, what are you doing to also get ready? That concludes my remarks. Thanks for your attention. I look forward to discussing this in more details during the panel. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Alex. Thank you. Okay, so we're up to our final speaker for today, Mr. Aaron Jagdfeld. And Aaron is the president and CEO of Generac Power Systems. And he's been in that position since 2008. He began his career there in 1994 and was instrumental in managing the sale of Generac to CCMP Capital Advisors. So I'd like to welcome to the stage Aaron Jagdfeld.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Morning. Morning. How are you guys doing? So, I'm Aaron Jagdfeld, President and CEO of Generac. You guys know who we are, but in case this is new to you in terms of who Generac really is, we were a privately held company for a long, long time. Started in 1959, so not quite, I guess we'd be the new kid on the block after watching all these presentations, right? Everybody was started around 1900. Everybody has, what we say, like 45,000 employees, 100 billion in sales, something like that. So we're a little smaller than that. We have 4,500 employees, about $1.6 billion in sales. Pretty good sized company, but all we do is basically power generation. I think that's what separates us maybe from some of the other companies that we compete with and that produce products for this industry. We put a lot of focus on power generation every day that we wake up, we eat, breathe, and sleep it. So when we have events like we've got with Harvey and Irma, we see a tremendous amount of activity at our company because it's all we do. And with Maria out there now headed towards Puerto Rico, it's been all hands on deck for us 24/7 for the last couple of weeks. In fact, I wasn't even sure if it was appropriate to even come here given all the things that we're going through right now and all the people that use our products are going through. Spending a lot of time trying to help as many people as we can, not only to get their products up and running if they need to, but just answering a lot of questions. Just as an example, we took 50,000 calls last Monday alone at our company. So you want to talk about the power of an event like Irma with 15 million people impacted by outages. And Matthias, it was longer than 48 minutes in that particular event. Roughly about 3 days on average, which I think is the fatal flaw in batteries, perhaps, in terms of when you go into a power outage, you don't exactly know how long it is going to last. So, but nonetheless, I think this is an industry that I would say even before 2 weeks ago is poised for quite a bit of growth, but certainly the events of the last couple of weeks have made that even more so. I think for me, I wanted to frame a couple of kind of industry topics. So whether you're an OEM like we are, or you're a distributor of our products, or any of the OEM's products, or you're a supplier, technician to the industry, I think these four kind of basic overarching macro themes, if you will, are what kind of permeate basically all of our businesses today. And you've heard about some of those things here this morning, and I'm sure you're going to hear about more of those today on the panel, but I thought I'd give you just a little bit of just to kind of frame the discussion around each of those. So the four topics for me were the growth dynamics of the industry, something that's referred to as the skills gap or the talent gap that you'll hear about, and I'm sure you've heard about, and maybe are experiencing firsthand as we are. Shifting technologies, we've been hearing a lot about that this morning. And then I would say future regulation, which I think, if you've been around this industry long enough, you know that there's only a ton of regulation that's been kind of coming through the industry over the last couple of decades, and I'm sure there'll be a lot more regulation coming forward. And just how do we deal with that as an industry? So those were the kind of four topics I wanted to frame. The industry growth dynamics. I think Alex said this. We were coming out of a slower period, and I think maybe more so for the larger companies like Cat and Cummins in particular that are tied more to the mining cycles. I do think that when you think about the world economy, it's obviously things have picked up and things seem to be moving kind of synchronously around the world for developed nations for sure. I think developing countries perhaps maybe not quite as quick at this stage of the game, but clearly in our industry, and this is just North America, power generation last year was about a $3.2 billion industry, and these are Frost & Sullivan's numbers. I'm sure you guys have seen all of these before. It's estimated that by 2021, this industry will be $3.8 billion. So that's about a 3% compounded annual growth rate, which is not great. I think that's Trump's number, right? He wants to get to 3% as a GDP. I think it's going to be very difficult to get to 3% GDP. That's as much as I think we all want to believe that'll happen. There are some constraints in the system that are going to hold us back from that, and I'll talk to that here in a second. But I think in our industry, I think we are going to outperform GDP growth in North America. And I think a lot of that is related to the reliability of the grid, the overarching unreliability, if you want to call it that, here in the U.S. market. I've said this a number of times, and we talk to a lot of people. We're a public company today, by the way, no longer owned by private equity, been public since 2010. So we get the opportunity to talk to a lot of different really smart people on Wall Street and in the investment community who really understand how to run companies and want to run companies. But they're actually better financially than they are at operating companies. But what they see and what we talk about is the fact that the grid in North America in particular suffers from a reliability issue, a power quality issue. And we travel around the world, as many of you do as well. And it's amazing when you go to places in developed, in Europe or even in Asia, and they can't fathom for even a second why we have such poor power quality here in the U.S. And the fact of the matter is because our power is cheap. I think that's the flip side of the coin, right? We've been blessed with low utility rates in this country for a long, long time. And that's great. I think it's a product of deregulation. But unfortunately, the flip side of that coin is it's dampened long-term investment in power generation, transmission, and distribution in this country. And so what that's led to is more power outages. So we're willing as Americans, even if maybe not openly so, we're willing to sit in the dark for roughly 48 minutes a year for a very large savings in terms of energy costs relative to other places around the world. And so there's a trade-off. And it's like everything in life, there's two sides to every story. And in this case, the other side of that story for us as an industry is a very, I think, dynamic industry here in the North American market that is projected to continue to grow. Now, when you look at these bars here, this stack bar, these represent different kW bands in the industry here. And there are different rates of growth amongst those bands. And so, they also are dependent on cycles. And the larger kW machines, obviously dependent on different types of cycles like data center build-out cycles and other non-res construction cycles. In the smaller kW ranges, which is where we basically started playing a long time ago as a company, we've seen tremendous growth. And in fact, the home standby generator category, residential generator category, it's an unbelievably robust category of product. And I think it's a good thing because what it does is it gets the conversation going at a completely different level about why you need backup power. So if you have that at the homeowner, if you're a homeowner and you're thinking about backup power, what do you think if you are a homeowner who owns a business? You're thinking about how, if you get a generator for your home, how could you have a generator on your home but not one on your business? So I think it's a really important part of this industry in terms of just a conversation starter. And for us, it's obviously, as the leader in that part of the market, it's a really important part of the growth opportunity that is this industry. So a lot could be said on this, and I'm sure we'll talk a lot more in the panel about the different segments of growth. Now, I wanted to talk about the second topic here, which was the talent gap or the skills gap. This is just a chart on unemployment. And you guys have seen this, and you've seen that it kind of peaked out unemployment around the time the last economic downturn happened back in 2008, 2009. Housing collapsed, and unemployment reached close to 10%. Today, nationally, we're about 4.5%, 4.4%, but it's obviously in some parts of the country, as it is in Wisconsin, we're down to 3.2%. And so I think one of the major limiters to growth, not only as an industry, but I think as a country, is this issue of people. We simply, the workforce participation rate is somewhere around 60%, and everybody wants to bemoan that that's a lot of able-bodied people who can work that are sitting on the sidelines. The fact of the matter is we're aging as a society. And there are a lot of baby boomers who are leaving the workforce every day. And so it's really an aging dynamic more than it is anything else. And that aging dynamic is really what's, I think, turning this into a constraint on growth. And in particular, I think it's very acute in certain technical fields, as it is, I would consider power generation a technical field. And in technical fields, engineering in particular, for us, we have nearly 400 engineers at our company, and it's very difficult to find new engineers. You have to go overseas. We opened a Chinese technical center because there are more engineers in China than there are being graduated anyway, than there are here in the US. There are more in India than there are being graduated in the US. There are more engineers available to us, especially when you talk about electromagnetics, which is obviously a critical part if you're a manufacturer and you wind your own alternators, like most of us do. Electromagnetics and the sciences there and the technical sciences there are a very intense skill set, and it's very difficult to find that type of skill set. So we've had to go far and wide to look for people to fill those gaps and those needs. But I think more importantly, we're also finding it to be a constraint in the manufacturing environment. We talk about bringing manufacturing back to this country, and we're at the forefront of that. We've been bringing a lot of manufacturing back to the U.S. We have 6 plants here in the North American market, most of those in Wisconsin. We have plants around the rest of the world to serve those local markets, but we're very proud of what we build for the U.S. is built in the U.S. But I have to tell you, it's very difficult to find people to do that. And so we're turning to automation, like most manufacturers are, but that creates a different problem. Now you have to find people who can actually operate those $1 million pieces of machines and pieces of equipment. And so there's a skills gap there. So we're just kind of pushing the skills gap around. I don't have any brilliant answers on how to solve that. I think as an industry, we need to continue to talk about it. We need to try and find programs to foster more entrance into the power generation market, into the technical ends of the markets, whether it be the engineering markets or the engineering components of the market or the manufacturing end of this market, the service technician end of this market. For those of you who are dealers or distributors out there, you know that there is an acute pain point around service technicians. And so I think we have to do more as an industry on this point. Now, you've heard a lot about shifting technologies, and I'm sure you're going to hear a lot on the panel, so I won't bemoan this. This graphic here is one that we use internally because obviously power generation is our core product line, but we also are the world's largest light tower manufacturer, and that's also got its own technology disruptors there with LED lights versus metal halides and halogens. So, but technology, and this was going to be my lead in here until I watched Terry's video, but the pace of change has quickened dramatically over the last 10 years. And then I saw that guy in the boat, from the 1990s, talking about a technology that even today I would say, we're closer to it, but I don't know that it's all the way there yet. This idea of diagnostics at the machine level and the ability to connect the diagnostics at the machine level to the activities around, whether it's service or repair or operation of the machine. I think for us as a company, what's interesting to me is more recently, the pace of technology change. This discussion around batteries in particular, which is fascinating, right? Because everybody thinks that we're going to be driven around, effectively won't be driving, will be driven around in electrified vehicles, right? We're not even going to drive, and that's all going to happen in the next 3 years, right? Because Tesla says so. Wrong. It's not. In fact, AI, right? The intelligence that you need for a self-driving car is nowhere near prime time, right? I mean, you can be like that knucklehead who, unfortunately, ran into the side of a truck because he was in the back seat of his car, letting the car drive itself. But that's not. It's not ready for prime time, and it's going to be, unfortunately, I think, for most people, I think it's going to be a long time before it is the self-driving component of that. I don't think there's any denying that electrification of vehicles is here. Hybrid vehicles have been around for a long time, and in fact, hybrids make a lot of sense. The regenerative braking that you get out of hybrids, I mean, the actual math actually works. In an electrified vehicle, the math really only works with subsidies today. Now, as Matthias pointed out, the cost per kilowatt hour of power is coming down. It's about $200, $250 per kilowatt hour today, and it's projected to be at 100. But there's no Moore's law in batteries, and I think that's what's going to hold back batteries. It's not like the microprocessor industry. And so I think there is going to be, you're going to see a diminishing point of returns in terms of how quickly that ramps down from this point forward. There's only so much more that scale can add to this. And in fact, I think one of the big questions out there is, will it really be lithium ion? Will that really be the technology that we look at 10 years from now? Remember nickel cadmium? That was going to be all the rage. Everything was going to be nickel cad. NiCad was going to be the big battery, and then all of a sudden it was gone. One day, nothing, all my power tools, I thought I was cool and hip, and I had all these NiCad power tools, and they became obsolete overnight because lithium ion came onto the scene. There could be something else out there chemistry-wise that makes more sense than lithium ion. I don't know. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a battery scientist. I just know that technology is changing quickly. And what you need to know is, as an industry, the OEMs, as you've heard today, are all very interested in where this goes, obviously for our own businesses and what it means for our own companies, but also for this industry. So a lot of dialogue here. I'm sure we'll have more today on the panel on that. And then last but not least, I think it goes without saying that we are in a, I think maybe it's without saying for every industry, but we are in a highly regulated industry, right? At the core of our products is a carbon-consuming reciprocating engine, right? An internal combustion engine, ICE. And that product, by its very nature, is heavily regulated. The emissions that come out of the tailpipe on every one of our generators is incredibly regulated. And I know the engine companies here would tell you the amount of R&D they've spent, $636 million. I think, Alex, was your number last year, R&D for Cummins alone. A lot of that R&D that's gone in to give you Tier 4 diesel engines today, where do you think that comes out? It comes out in a higher cost engine, right? A Tier 4 engine today is 2x the cost of a Tier 3 engine. Why do we know this? Because I buy a lot of them. And so that's an important consideration, particularly when it's the largest cost component of a generator. And so you're going to see this continued march towards regulation of our industry. I don't think it's going to stop at Tier 4, right? I don't think if you're on the, shall we say, the left-hand side of that discussion, that there's any position outside of zero emissions that works, right? You can't have a rational conversation with anybody on the left about emissions, because how many emissions are too many? Whatever the cost, this is what they'll tell you, whatever the cost is, we should pay it as a society. And I think we all agree. We want clean, fresh air. We want clean lakes and water. Everybody wants that. And we want that as well as manufacturers. And we do our part to try and push that forward, best available technologies. But there is a point of diminishing returns in terms of cost benefit. But that's a statement that the left will never understand, right? Cost benefit. That's a foreign concept. And as a result, you end up with more regulation. And so this chart is the number of federal regulations, the number of pages of federal regulations that are on the books, now approaching 100,000 pages of federal regulations. And I think the point here is that as an industry, we have to, it's a one-way trip. You're not turning back, right? Regulation only goes up. You might have some points along the curve where you get somebody with some rational thinking that can pull it back down, but they can't pull it back down to zero. We're not going to zero on regulation. It's only going to add additional cost into our products. It's going to add additional cost into our operations. It adds additional cost into your operations. And it's all something we have to deal with. And so I think this is an area where industry can really come together to work to be ahead of that, be proactive, be a part of the conversation, before regulation is put into the market. And there are many examples where many people in this room and in this industry are at those tables where they need to be. And there are also many examples out there in our industry where we're not at the table, where our voice is not heard. And that, I think, is a big opportunity for us. And it also could be a big problem for us because the next regulation that comes out, could impact our businesses dramatically. I don't know what it's going to be, but we should all be aware that there will be another regulation, whatever that is. Because again, it only goes one way. So I'm looking forward to the rest of the topics today. I appreciate you guys having me and looking forward to addressing the group later. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Aaron, thank you. Well, folks, I hope you took away a lot of good information from our speakers today, and I'd just like to take one more second and give them all a big round of applause. Thank you. I know in my notes I had a lot of comments about global trends and how we as an industry can work together to get ahead of those trends. A lot of comments about making sure that we address some of the things like Aaron mentioned, the talent gap. And of course, how do we make sure that we use today's technology to ensure that we have a solid future in our industry? So a lot of good takeaways and looking forward to the second part of our discussion.